The origins of this particular event actually lie in a conversation that Mohandas Pai and I had in Mumbai some months ago. And I'm really delighted that we could move what was a casual discussion in another event in Mumbai into an actual event in Bengaluru. And I really can't think of a more appropriate place to do this than Bengaluru, because it is a city which has a very special place in the evolution of modern Indian science and technology. And I know it, my formative years were spent in the city. And it's not just the science and technology. I think it also has a very unique place in Indian industry and thereafter in the history of our information technology and innovation. So in all those roles, Bangalore actually has been a bridge to the world at a time when technological progress is acquiring global dimensions. Now, over the next 2 days, you will be discussing different aspects of innovation and its impact on Indian society. As you deliberate on these issues, and I recognize each one of those issues is a world unto itself, I ask myself what value that I, as a practicing diplomat, can bring to your discussions. Probably the most helpful thing I can do is to set a context, an international one and a national one. And as I said again, Bangalore is just the right place to do so. So let me start with the international side. I would ask you all to reflect on the fact that the changes that we are today in the midst of in India, these are not unique, even if they have very strong national characteristics. Anybody who's looked at comparative change will tell you that beginning with Japan 150 years ago, then Russia as Soviet Union, the Asian tiger economies, and then China, we've actually had a succession of agrarian economies that transformed themselves into industrial societies. Each one of them had their own particular catalyst, but at the end of the day, they shared one common feature. They all strategized change. They may have begun by doing the reforms that they must, but they ended by doing the change that they wished. In each case, this had profound social and technological repercussions and transformed the nation, the society in question, as a serious player in international politics. So by that yardstick, where do we in India stand today? Obviously, as a society that has been in the midst of rapid change since 1991, the natural inclination is to assume that we too are on the same track. Yet, it's worth asking ourselves, and I think Dr. Raja Mohan started that discussion, whether we have pursued the path of reform as single-mindedly, as assiduously, as comprehensively as these other states. Have we consciously striven to move beyond change mandated by compulsion to embrace a more ambitious developmental vision of our own future? A large part of the debate over the last 25 years has been in freeing up the economy and creating new opportunities. As someone who can remember the period before 1991, I would hardly underestimate its significance. Indeed, this year we have some very interesting books on that subject. But what has become clear as years passed was that we have actually fallen short in many respects in our transition to a major industrialized economy. In particular, our limitations in building substantial manufacturing capacities are evident. But equally, there are attitudes and habits that come with change that India is still to fully internalize. Today, we endeavor to take a broader and more intensive path of reform, one that bears perhaps a little more similarity to some of the examples I mentioned earlier. Expanding manufacturing and generating employment are key goals. Equally in play are creation of conditions to make that possible, among them the skilling of our workforce and the closing of the gender gap. Indeed, if you look at the cumulative impact of various national campaigns and initiatives that have been announced in the last 2 years, Make in India, Skill India, Swachh Bharat, Digital India, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Smart Cities and Startup India, the outlines of a larger thinking that aspires to rapidly progress and modernize India are quite visible. It's a comprehensive vision that balances manufacturing and services, urban and rural, and the future and the past. Do also bear in mind that even as they go forward, we are moving towards a more unified and less informal economy. There's no reason to doubt that the aggregate outcome of all these developments would be as impactful on the world as those of others who have taken the path before us. This is the future for which you must plan and prepare. Now, while making the case that India's quest has some precedents, let me balance that argument with the point that there are indeed some singular points in our endeavor. One, India is alone in attempting such sweeping transformation in a democratic framework. Two, this exercise is taking place in a more pluralistic social environment. These socio-political realities are the causes, perhaps, for a more evolutionary and painstaking approach till now. While hard to quantify, they nevertheless leave little doubt that this heterogeneity not only promotes creativity in India, but could condition us to be more effective in our interactions with the world. Global developments over the last century have been driven by two broad currents. One is the intensive and continuous technological and innovation development of Euro-Atlantic societies that owned the first industrial revolution. The other is the quantitative and qualitative transformation of Asian societies that I've spoken about. Their merging today provides the motor that drives the global economy and constitutes the core of the emerging international order. The world is not only getting flatter, it is also getting more interpenetrative. This obviously has implications for the conduct of international relations, but equally for the diffusion of technologies and sharing of innovations. Most important, the terms of engagement between the two currents is changing rapidly. External relations have a particularly important role to play in promoting development and hastening social change. In each of the cases I mentioned earlier, their governments made a concerted effort to attract technologies, best practices, and capital from abroad. Indeed, it was often the external inputs that provided the catalytic elements. India's case is perhaps somewhat different. On the one hand, our levels of stability are much higher and our path of progress much steadier. To that extent, we could perhaps contemplate many of the transformational initiatives as coming from within. That said, the role of NRIs and persons of Indian origins in promoting change is hard to overstate. Our engagement with the world is taking many forms, among them global partnerships that widen technology access, regime memberships that help set policy and regulate activity, as well as promotional initiatives that advance our interests in larger forums. The India-US nuclear understanding and subsequent follow-up with other countries, the most recent was with Japan, are notable in that regard, not just for their immediate impact on the nuclear industry, but also as an enabler of larger, broader technological interflows. The membership of the Nuclear Suppliers Group, the Missile Technology Control Regime, and the Wassenaar Arrangement are natural progressions. That the focus of our diplomacy today is on examples like the International Solar Alliance, the Defense Trade and Technology Initiative with the United States, or the Shinkansen high-speed rail project with Japan speaks volumes of our changed thinking. When the Prime Minister of India visits Tesla, Google, and Facebook, there's a clear message. Even more so when he takes a personal interest in startups at home. Technology, of course, is a key driver of economic and social development. when it comes to international relations, it is often asserted, not without basis, that sharp changes in technology levels have led to shifting balances in power. Indeed, the story of war and of politics is one of human ingenuity and capabilities from medieval times when the arrow and the armor competed, as did fortification and siegecraft. Gunpowder and metallurgy are other big game-changing examples. And as we move into the industrial age, which has actually been success has been correlated with standardization. But the point I would emphasize is, though the narrative often focuses on materials and technology, at every stage there has been an accompanying and profound shift of culture. In fact, it is that culture which permeates through society and brings about the change in the habits, the discipline, the attitude, and perhaps even the ambitions of that society. As a diplomat, I'm conscious today that this mindset can really lead India to look at the world in a very different way. A more tech-focused India has considerable implications for not just public policy, but I believe also for our approach to engaging the world. Now, within the government, it is well known that applications of technology is acquiring a more salient place, whether it is the Pragati conference that the Prime Minister takes to assess important projects, or the e-Samiksha that monitors implementations of decisions, or the Mother platform by which my ministry monitors and receives and addresses consular problems and grievances. These practices today have got very rapidly routinized. Similarly, the communications world has undergone its revolution, and the social media, to my mind, is a great example of direct benefit transfer. The broader direction of our society is towards an embrace of technology on a scale and manner that we could not have even conceived of a few years earlier. The challenge is to expand the human resources that could lead and sustain this trend. If India is to emerge as a truly leading power in the world, it can do so only when its human resources are brought into full play. As with other aspects of reform, we cannot leave it to osmosis and gravity. All the major modernizing societies before us have made this issue central to their strategizing. Given the nature of our society, this responsibility cannot and should not rest in the government alone. We are seeing a determined effort today to expand both skilling and education at various levels. Taking that into technology and innovation calls not just for higher levels of commitment, but also greater imagination and more commercialization. This is an area where we can leverage global interest, taking advantage of the fact that the world itself has an interest in diversifying the geographies of technology. Concerns of excessive dependence on a few are already visible in many sectors. Furthermore, India itself needs to think of customizing training and skills preparation for specific markets. There's a strong cultural element to how we work and how we think, and partnerships with countries like Japan and Germany are more likely to be successful if they factor in languages and skills. Now, all of you know much better than me that a very different world awaits us. It is a world of greater digitalization and innovation, as it is of a very different connection and communication. The passage into modernity should make us richer, including in data. But this will have its own challenges. Our value proposition to the world will also transform itself. India's association must not be that of frugal innovation alone. The adjective could end up overpowering the noun. The space industry, also centered in Bangalore, is a trendsetter for the world that could open up for the larger tech industry. More branding, greater deployment, and stronger commercialization is the way by which Indian technology can make itself felt in the world. I hope, as we are seeking to do in our national aspirations and foreign policy goals, the tech community will also think bigger and aim higher. At the end of the day, as B.F. Skinner famously said, the real problem is not whether machines can think, but whether humans do. Thank you.